Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antics Society tasting. And this evening, I'm going to be doing a tasting of three of the Glenmorangie A Tale of. The three we're going to taste tonight are all rather sweet whiskies. We have Glenmorangie A Tale of Cake, bottled at 46% ABV. And then we're going to have Glenmorangie A Tale of Winter, again at 46% ABV. And finally, the new one, just released, Glenmorangie A Tale of Ice Cream, again bottled at 46%. So the Glenmorangie A Tale of series started, I think, about 5 years ago, and there have been now five limited editions so far in the series, which feature Glenmorangie's whiskey director, Dr. Bill Lumsden's artistry in whiskey making. As well as the three we're going to taste here, there's also A Tale of the Forest, which is first made with barley kilned with botanicals, and it was inspired by the woodlands near Glenmorangie's director of whiskey creations, Dr. Bill Lumsden's home. He decided to try and make a dram that would evoke the scents, sounds, and sights of the forest. So he kilned the barley with botanicals, and that used to be a common practice. And Glenmorangie revived it here after a series of experiments. So they used juniper berries, birch bark, and heather flowers, as well as a little peat used to kiln the barley to create a Glenmorangie as lush and leafy as the forest itself, in Dr. Lumsden's words. To allow the spirit's flavours to shine, he aged the whiskey in bourbon casks, including many refill casks. And then there was A Tale of Tokyo, which was inspired by his desire to capture his experience of Tokyo's many sensory dimensions and to experiment with rare Japanese Mizunara oak casks for the first time. He united Glenmorangie, part aged in the Mizunara oak, with whiskey that had spent time in both sherry and bourbon casks for a unique edition that's perfectly balanced with Glenmorangie's house style. And that whiskey fuses notes of pepper with bitter cherries and mouth-watering orange zest with incense and sweet oak. A unique and complex flavour profile resulting from the recipe of Mizunara oak, bourbon, and sherry casks. But first up tonight, we're going to describe and taste and nose the Glenmorangie A Tale of Cake. And I've had a few of these over the last 3 or 4 years. And the he set aside, Dr. Lumsden set aside some casks of the Glenmorangie 10-year-old and gave them a further maturation in Tokai casks, the sweet dessert wine from Hungary. And that resulted in a limited expression called Glenmorangie A Tale of Cake. And he wanted to capture the joy of a slice of cake in a glass, lemon drizzle cake, no less. And they even teamed up with a patisserie chef to create a series of cocktail and cake pairings. Um, so the box says this is non-chill filtered. I have looked up and it is non-chill filtered, non-coloured, but the label doesn't say that. There's nothing on the label to say non-chill filtered or or non-coloured. It does say Glenmorangie Limited Edition. Some time ago, our director of whiskey creation, Dr. Bill, found himself musing over how some of his most joyful memories came from cake, from the pineapple upside down cake his daughter made for his birthday, to baking with his granny in her kitchen. And he devised this whiskey to conjure the magic of a cake moment, finishing his favourite Glenmorangie single malt in the finest Tokai dessert wine cask. So it says the liquid is a rich copper, but the taste is pure Technicolor, luscious, sweet, and complex, with multi-layered bursts of honey, white chocolate, and fruits, with a lilting hint of mint. As you might expect, it tastes incredible when enjoyed with actual cake. Well, I'm not going to have a cake except for an oat cake at the end here. But let's see, I've had a couple of Tokai cask finishes. One of my favourite whiskies is Glenmorangie Warehouse 1 Tokai cask finished. Let's see how this compares. It's a nice bottle. You get a nice box. You get the sort of idea of a cake here. A nice brightly coloured box. So non-chill filtered, natural colour, 46% ABV. And let's see. And there's certainly some tears there. Nice tears. Not the thickest, but there are tears. Let's see where the nose takes us on this. And the bouquet is much more fragrant and heavier than the typical product from Glenmorangie. It opens with bright and sweet notes of tangerines, honey, creme brulee, and vanilla. And that then leads into thicker and richer notes of white chocolate, caramel, apricots, and thick slices of dried mango. And there's a much bolder spiciness than the usual Glenmorangie. That does subside after about 30 seconds or so, and it turns towards a slightly more malty, yeasty, and earthy character, which is reminiscent of bread crust on a buttery glazed bun. There is so much vanilla sweetness and fruitiness layered over by darker notes with a surprising amount of depth. And it's a sweet, rich, and complex bouquet, which is uncommon to casks that are simply bourbon matured. It's very sweet and syrupy, and is pushing the boundaries with a very big vanilla custard theme. Mango and floral honey on top of the classic Glenmorangie fruits like peaches, oranges, and quinces. And there's hints of muscat grapes and a little marzipan with lightly minty, nutty touches. It's very creamy stuff with enough fresh appeal as well. We'll try the mouth on this now. There's no age statement in this, but it's one of the most heavy-bodied Glenmorangies I've tried. The entry is smooth and rich, with so much sweet, fruity notes of honey, vanilla, apricots, mango, and buttery pound cake. And the texture is viscous and satisfying, and the liquid coats your tongue. And those flavors develop, and it opens to slightly darker notes of toffee and caramelized white chocolate, studied with candied orange. There's trace amounts of roasted nuts and almonds, and there's a tinge of grape skin dryness with a moderate amount of fragrant oak and tannin. And as the whiskey goes down your throat, a substantial amount of mint and spice develops on the back palate, a dusting of star anise flakes and ground cinnamon. It's sweet and slightly liqueur-like again, though maybe less than expected after the nose. Pineapple, tinned peaches, and grapes, oranges again. Some vanilla cake indeed. Honey-coated almonds. However, the peppery and mentholated notes combined with a bitter fruit element bring down the sweetness a little. And it ends on a slightly mineral, tangy oak. And the finish is long, with darker fruits and chocolate, along with marmalade and spicy oak. And there's a lingering sweetness of honey, orange peel, star anise, and a faint aroma of pineapple. I'm going to put some water in this, but I've actually drunk my first measure, so I'm going to have to pour myself another. Just a little. This is a nice bottle, Glenmorangie. I like the shape of it. Quite classy. I think they produce about 7 million litres a year, so plenty of it. I'm going to try, let's see, 5 drops of water. I should put 6 in. A teaspoon is about 5 milliliters. I always feel that's maybe just a little to add first up. So I use a pipette and put drops rather than 5 drops is about a milliliter or so. So let's see how we got the mist. A little perhaps. Not entirely convinced there. Let's see. And it's like candy floss in which you pour light blossom honey, apricot jelly, lemon sorbet, candied ginger, and soft peanuts. There's lots of vanilla and light toffee, of course, almonds, and with time a real cream cake emerges. And the nose is just as sweet with water. I think with water there are a few more spicy wine notes and something in the background there, like aniseed. And with water, there's a nice acidity as a direct contrast to the sweetness. It's still young and fresh, fresh ginger, blossom honey, a tick of green apple, a lemon peel, and grassiness, peach, buttery, a little yogurt, powdered sugar, toffee, and subtle oak. It becomes a little sweeter with water. And it benefits from a little one because the sour taste disappeared, but a slightly spicy, peppery note is added. And the mouth doesn't really become thinner despite the water. It's a shorter finish, short to medium length now, as opposed to long before the water. Um, Ginger, camphor, green apple, peach, oak, and malt. There's a bitter oak and sour fruit notes, a few spices, and not so much sweetness on the finish. It's a bit flat, the finish, unfortunately, which tends to suggest the whiskey isn't that old. So a tailor cake pulls it off nicely compared to the core range Glenmorangies, which are already sweet and fruity. This has less sweetness than I expected and less complexity than I'd hoped for. It's quite a successful result, though. It's a perfect mix of fruit, wood, and sweetness. And there's a very light cinnamon sharpness. It's so close to the perfectly refreshing and balanced whiskey. Close, but not quite a cigar. So I'm going to cleanse my palate with the Duncan's of D-side oatcake. So next up, we have Glenmorangie Tale of Winter, which again, not a dissimilar colour scheme, but it's like a woolly winter jumper, Christmas jumper almost. And you can see the Glenmorangie is done like a knitted pattern there. And again, this one's at 46%. On the box, it says non-chill filtered. A little nice touch on the box. Like you see the top there. This whiskey belongs to. So, I tell you, winter, Dr. Lumsden, Dr. Bill, wanted to evoke the feeling of winter, of sitting in front of a fireplace with whilst the snow falls outside. And to do so, he finished Uh, Bourbon barrel matured single malt Glenmorangie in ex Marsala wine casks with all those rich, comforting, chocolatey notes. So it should put it in the winter warmer category. Uh, and unlike others in the Tale of series, it doesn't say it on the box, but this one is actually a 13-year-old. Marsala is a town on the western coast of Sicily, and it has a higher alcohol content, ranging from 15 to 20%, because it's fortified with brandy. It's classified by its colour, gold, amber, and ruby, and it ranges in sweetness from dry to very sweet. Some people may think it's just a dry wine for cooking, but like olive oil, Marsala has had an image problem due to cheap knockoffs. So why is Glenmorangie finishing its whiskey in Marsala? Well, the flavour profile of Marsala typically contains apricot, tamarind, vanilla, brown sugar, and tobacco. Dried or stewed fruit and nuts can be found as well. So this whiskey is already mellowed in ex-bourbon barrels, but the Marsala on the finish should provide the wintry scene Dr. Bill was searching for. So it's a nice colour, this one. I believe it's non-coloured, but it doesn't tell you that on the box or on the label. And again, it has some tears, quite thin, but there are tears there. And the nose opens with lemon scented nail polish remover. Although it's quite potent, it's not harsh. It's rather more ethereal. And vanilla bean lingers over the drum like pudding. It's somewhat reminiscent of a holiday spiced fruit cake. And slices of orange mingle with dried apricots. Clove and allspice provide depth and warmth. And there is sweetness, a mixture of creme brulee paired with peaches, served with oranges and apples on vanilla ice cream. Try them out. And it's light and warm, like a cozy sweater. And the orange slices from the nose are bright on the palate. Uh, Demerara sugar does not oversweeten the dram, but it pulls out the vanilla bean. And it's full of spice, clove, allspice, and a stick of cinnamon. And the orange and vanilla been lingering on the breath after the sip, and that is when you get a bit of oak. It's a medium light texture and arrives with spiced apples, dried blueberries, milk chocolate, and sweet malt. It's very winey as it develops, with loads of baking spice, some sweet oak, brown sugar, and more earthy hints. And the finish is long. Sweetness dominates, followed by spices such as cloves and cinnamon, and more rich, dark sweet notes. Rhubarb crumble, figs, cola syrup, and dark chocolate. And there's a sort of lingering cinnamon and ginger, almost a sweet, smoky ham note here. I'll try 5 drops of water in this one too. Yeah, the tears are still there, and there is certainly a Scotch mist forming there. And now with water, pear and white peach catch the spotlight. And with water, fruit, chocolate, and spices. I think I prefer it with a little water, just red fruits with a little bit of tropical fruits on the side. And a unique kind of spiciness, more peppery and chili. And then it goes into macadamia. Uh, I think the official notes say Brazil nut, which is accurate. There's a sweetness, but it turns into the peppery spiciness quickly. Cocoa, Brazil nuts, vanilla tablet, jammy red berry sweetness developing, and crystallized ginger. And on the finish, spicy ginger remains, but it's mellowed by vanilla and chocolate mousse. It's alive with the marsala and with oakiness and cinnamon and more oak. And it's a long and wispy finish, not at all overpowering, and delicate and flavorful. So I would say Dr. Bill's hit the mark with trying to recreate a cozy scene here, a cozy winter scene. I think it's probably a hit, this one. It may be a bit too spicy or too hot for some Glenmorangie fans. I think probably if you like rum, you might like this one. Uh, it's a whiskey that, as the name suggests, is made for winter and Christmas season. It has some exciting notes on the nose, which are topped off on the taste. Fruity, sweet, and spicy and tart. A great combination that often changes. So I'll cleanse my palate with my Dunkin's of D-side oatcake. And finally, for this tasting, we have the Glenmorangie, A Tale of Ice Cream. And the idea is the colours here and the graphics suggest a nice clean parlour, and there's like little balls of ice cream there, and the toppings. Again, non-coloured, non-chill filtered, but it doesn't say it in the bottle. It says non-chill filtered on the box, but not on the bottle. Bottle's nice. Bit of ice cream, and let's see. This one's considerably lighter than the first two. Lighter in colour. Again, 46% ABV. So, some time ago, Dr. Bill began to imagine that he could capture the lavish flavours found in an ice cream parlour in a single malt Scotch whisky, bringing out even more sweet and creamy vanilla-like flavours in Glenmorangie's spirit. And after a host of experiments, he and master blender Gillian MacDonald united single malt aged in bourbon casks with their first whisky finished in high vanillin casks. These new oak casks have been especially toasted to bring out more vanilla qualities, rippling with notes of ripe peaches, vanilla, and coconut. So, A Tale of Ice Cream is to take Glenmorangie's sweet, fruity flavours to a decadent peak. And the pastel tone presentation box evokes the mouth-watering hues, swirls of sauce, textures, and toppings found in the most luxurious of ice cream parlours. So, is this a tale of ice cream or a tale of gelato? Let's see. So, it's quite a nice colour. 46% ABV, limited edition. And I would say of the three, this has the thinnest tiers. And vanilla pod and butterscotch rise first, and are quickly joined by some woody spices, cinnamon and mace especially. And then there's further aromas of caramelized peach drizzled in honey, marzipan, and bitter orange oil also comes through nicely. Some white chocolate, vanilla custard, and hints of fresh coconut. And coconut that you would find in a Bounty bar as well. Candied coconut. And there's a burst of Manuka honey with lemon butter candy, baking raisin bread, candied orange peel, peaches, toffee, and a hint of spice. And there's an enticing nose of gentle vanilla custard and butterscotch with a honeyed edge, orange, apricot, and a touch of lemon, and some sweet coconut ice. Try them out. Texture is thick, rich, and creamy, and it's followed by a huge burst of sweet and spicy flavours. Brioche, almond marzipan, honeycomb, fudge, lemon sherbet, and desiccated coconut. And those spices warm up the palate with cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and clove. It's full bodied and rich. There's some creamy vanilla, but it's not as intense, the vanilla, as I was expecting. It's a sort of buttery honeycomb infused with toasted oak and some toasted almond. Orange citrus, apricot, peach, honey, and some lovely oak spices, some late ginger, a silky, creamy, and luxurious feel. It grips the taste buds, luscious notes of apricot patisserie, vanilla custard, and butterscotch. And then you get the brioche and the honeycomb straight from the hive, and some white chocolate. Hints of cocoa powder and cream coconut sit in the background. And then some savoury notes do develop, um, which had a superb balance. Imagine a combination of toasted almond, cinnamon bark, and bitter orange peel, married with freshly sawn oak, gingerbread, and a drop of clove oil. And these savoury notes add depth and complexity, but they don't take away from the deliciousness. And this has a long, lingering aftertaste. It has hints of toffee apple, butterkiss popcorn, and a hint of aniseed. A touch of vanilla. It's a little savoury and buttery, with a wee hint of lingering orange, apricot, and peach, some ginger, and the delicious oak spices of the final word. It's the savoury notes that linger, but the sweeter elements take their time to dissipate from your taste buds too. The patisserie notes fade first, then the fruit, which leaves the warming wood and baking spices to play on the tongue. It's a lovely experience. The fresh vanilla pod characteristic endures throughout and is joined right at the death by a hint of sweet orange fondant. I'm going to try 5 drops of water in this. And it has lovely tears now. And with water, you get the vanilla creme anglaise, coconut, and a whiff of almond marzipan. It's a smooth and pleasant aroma with notes of honey, vanilla, lemon candy, and a hint of raisin bread. And then there's nuances of orange peel, peach, toffee, and subtle spices. Try them out. and it's still full and rich, with a sort of mix of sweet and spicy notes taking centre stage. Brioche, honey, fudge, sorbet, coconut, cinnamon, and toffee. And the finish is long, rich, and sweet, and it makes overall for an interesting tasting experience. I was expecting a sweeter whiskey with more vanilla. With this one, the oak and the fruit are the stars, but not in the sweet and vanillaed way I was expecting. It's a little more savoury than sweet, but it's still a nice whiskey with a nice long finish. It does feel a bit like going back to basics, Glenmorangie, in excellent ex-bourbon cask, is the best Glenmorangie. And the introduction of the high vanilla and virgin American oak cask has dialed the classic notes up a notch or two. And the result is quite delicious. If you love Glenmorangie, then you'll love this. So, all of this tale of series, and especially the three I've tasted here, they all seem a little bit Willy Wonka-ish. And I'd say, okay, the whiskies each delivered on the brief in achieving an evocation of their tales. But a big but though, they're all approaching £80 a bottle. And I don't think that represents true value for what are niche, possibly even novelty whiskies. As a treat around Christmas time, a 40 to £50 bottle of these would tempt me more. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.